also. Coming back to your period. One of the most important things that you want to understand is that every month you are experiencing two phases and two occurrences. Okay. Your period begins with your cycle, or your cycle begins with your period, is how I should say. And your period and the arrival of your period, whether it comes stealthily or with a lot of drama, depends on how well you took care of yourself in the previous months. Okay. And different hormones rule different phases. And so to explain that, I've put it in this circular format in this image over here. You start your cycle with the onset of your period. You will bleed for 5 to 6 days. And then after that is the start of your follicular phase. Okay. Why follicular? Because imagine follicles or small follicles that are being released into the ovaries that are going to ripen at the time of ovulation, which is why follicular. But also at the time of follicular phase is when your orange lion hormone, estrogen, is rising, and with it, testosterone is rising. Okay. What happens in this phase specifically, because of the rise in estrogen and testosterone here, you will see increased energy levels and mood elevation. Both of these hormones, estrogen and testosterone, are responsible for energy, mood stabilization, helping you feel better, as well as cognitive function. This will be the time in your monthly cycle where you will feel sharp, creative, sharp. And so if you are somebody who works a job, this is the time to be creative. I'll get into the phase a little bit later, but just giving you an overall picture. This rise or these rise in hormones, estrogen and testosterone, is leading you to ovulation. Just like your period, which is only 5 to 6 days, your ovulation is a fertile window of 5 to 6 days, which is why it's an occurrence and not a phase. Then you move on from ovulation, which is the peak time in your menstrual cycle, right? Like I will go as far as to say that ovulation is more important than your cycle. If you don't ovulate, you will not get your period. So for every woman, ovulation is absolutely essential. And our body was designed to get us pregnant every month, right? Which is why ovulation should be taking place on a monthly basis. Once ovulation is taking place, then either our body is preparing for a possible pregnancy or it is preparing to shed its uterine lining, which happens in this phase, the luteal phase. How we take care of ourselves in this phase is going to make us or break us, okay? And I'll explain all of this a little bit more in detail, but giving you an overall picture over here on the 4 different experiences that you have every month. I'll now draw another parallel for you and explain the seasons of your cycle. What do I mean by the seasons of our cycle? I mean, if you're diving into cyclical living a little bit deeper, I want you to see that every month the ebb and flow of the hormones, estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone quite literally make us and help us live 4 different seasons from the within. I want you to think of the follicular phase, or actually let's start with the start of your cycle, which is your period, which is the menstrual phase, okay? Your cycle begins with the arrival of your period. And so the first phase you experience every month is the menstrual phase or the winter, the inner winter. And just as winter is a time for when the natural world slows down and many animals hibernate to conserve energy, the menstrual phase is a period for women to retreat inwards, slow down, and conserve their energy. Then moves the follicular phase, which is spring. In spring, days start to get longer. Life seems to reawaken and with more energy and vibrancy. So similarly, during the follicular phase, many women will experience a surge in physical energy and mental alertness. This boost is thanks to the rising levels of estrogen and testosterone, as I was mentioning earlier. Then we move on to the best time of the year, which is summer. Long, vibrant days of summer, the ovulatory phase marks the peak in a woman's vitality because estrogen and testosterone are at their highest levels. This enhances how we feel, how we look. Energy levels are at their peak. We have the most mental clarity than we ever have. And this is when women are most often most capable and energetic. And then we move into the make it or break it phase, which is autumn or fall, luteal phase. This is when nature is preparing for winter's rest. So luteal phase is a preparation for the potential onset of menstruation or the body is preparing to support a pregnancy. So how we take care of ourselves is absolutely essential over here. So then we move and our brain mode shifts from social engagement, which is during spring and summer, to self-preservation during luteal and winter, right? There's times in the month, exactly 14 days apart, if you have a 28-day cycle, where the first 14 days of your cycle are meant for you to be in social engagement, and your need to socially engage with friends, your spouse, your husband is the highest because your hormones, estrogen and testosterone, are also activating your need for serotonin, oxytocin, which are all the neurotransmitters in your brain that release happiness. Another biological reason for you to be in social engagement is because your body wants you to increase your chances of conception. So it wants you to plan dates with your husband, and it wants you to be like sexually active at this point of time because it wants you to get pregnant. We were biologically designed for this on a monthly basis. And then when we naturally move into the latter half of our cycle, which is the inner autumn and inner winter, our brain mode shifts to self-preservation because we want to preserve our energy, either for a pregnancy, even when we are with child, with a fetus in our wombs, even then we want to preserve our energy because your maternal instincts will naturally kick in to conserve energy and to protect yourself and your child. And then we also want to prepare for menstruation if we do not get pregnant, which is why we move into brain mode self-preservation. I'm actually going to quickly touch on all of these phases bit by bit, okay? Diving a little bit deeper, helping you understand them characteristically. So menstrual phase, which is the first phase of your cycle, which is when you start to get your period, is marked by a time of retreat and restoration. Winter is a time when the natural world slows down, animals hibernate to conserve energy. The menstrual phase is a period for women to retreat inward, slow down, and conserve their energy. This is a time for rest and recuperation as the body sheds the uterine lining and prepares for the next cycle. This is also a time, so if you answered yes to the question, which was during your period, do you feel a need to withdraw socially and focus on self-care? It would make sense because it is a time of retreat and restoration. Reflection and renewal. So winter is often seen as a period of reflection, a time to look back at the growth that you've had in like everything leading up to winter, and then also a time to prepare for the next growth of spring. So similarly, during menstruation, many women will find themselves reflecting more deeply on their past experiences of personal and professional lives. And so if you said yes to the question, if you find yourself reflecting more on personal matters and decisions, makes sense. You also have lower energy levels. Your hormones, estrogen, look at the red box that I've marked over here. This is when you're menstruating. Your hormones are at their lowest point right now. Naturally, your physical energy is going to be the lowest at this time as well. Nurturing the self, okay? Now think of if you have friends who live in the West, anybody who lives in the Western hemisphere of the world and experiences harsh winter, you'll often hear them talking about hot cocoa, mulled wine, and all of the things that are warm and nourishing. Similarly, when your hormone levels are at their lowest, we want to be nurturing ourselves with warming foods. So think about hot stews, hot soups, because the inner energy of our body is so cold. It is like winter. Everything is dead from the within. We want to nurture our body and give it the warmth that it requires because it's experiencing winter. You'll naturally want to reduce your social interaction just because you're not feeling your best, and you also don't have the physical
Can I
capability.
interrupt? Can I write down few things if I want to, like while you're
I'm
talking?
actually going to share the presentation, but if you also want to, more than happy. And it's a time for preparation for renewal. See, the earth needs winter because it has to reset and it has to prepare for spring. Everything has to fall, has to die. Similarly, we have to let go of the old uterine lining and prepare for new energy, for new growth to take place in our bodies. Let's talk about what happens if you don't honor your menstrual cycle and what if you don't do these things during your period. Apart from pleasing others, disservicing your body and your need for rest, which can then cause painful PMS symptoms in the next month and eventually maybe hormonal imbalance, not much. This is something that I asked everyone to screenshot when they were doing the presentation with me on Sunday. What is it that you can do for this phase of your cycle? Okay. If you want to click a picture of this, you can. If you want to wait for me to send the presentation, you can also do that. But here, yeah, go ahead. You want to essentially think about increasing your intake of protein and healthy fats. Choose nutrient-dense foods as well as warming foods, and replenish your body with iron and zinc, which can be lost during menstruation. What about movement? You want to do as little movement as you can, naturally. You want to honor your body's need for rest and let that guide your choice. Some women find that doing yoga, stretching, or light walking helps them relieve cramping. But if your body is telling you that you shouldn't do anything, then actually just take those 5 to 6 days of rest, because you have the month leading up to that week of rest to actually do everything that you want. So this time in the month, if you are somebody who's already active, should be observed as rest. All right, let's talk about the inner spring. Everything's starting to change. There's growth on the trees. There is end of winter, new growth. Follicular phase, which starts right after menstruation, brings with it renewal and growth. It's a time when the body is preparing for ovulation and pregnancy, rebuilding of the uterine lining, and rise in estrogen levels. So if you can see the diagram here, orange line, which is estrogen, is on the rise. Because this hormone is rising, it's going to make us feel increased energy and vitality, creativity and motivation. So I actually want to talk about creativity and motivation a little bit here and tell you that in my business and in my practice, just to give you an example, this is the time that I will use to plan all my creative endeavors. My social media planning takes place at this time because naturally I'm feeling my most creative. And the rise in hormones is making my brain chemistry work in a way where I'm feeling most creative. So in your personal life, if you need to find the time to be creative, this is the time to hone into, just after your period when the hormones are on the rise. Optimism and positivity and social engagement. Your need to socialize is starting to rise right now, which is why you want to honor it. If you answered yes to a lot of the questions that I asked, some of them were, do you feel inclined to start or try new projects? It could be, and if you said yes, then that has a thing to do with creativity and motivation, because as I said, your hormones are rising, making you feel most creative. If you also said yes, that you notice an increase in energy levels and motivation, would also make sense because of the rise in hormones. Let's talk about what you can do specifically to honor this phase. And as I was just giving you the example, right now is the time to engage in new projects, plan, socialize for your plan for your business, all the creative endeavors that you want to take, increase physical activity. So if you want to try something new, now is the time because your body will actually support it. Another one for you to screenshot, or you can hold for later. What is it that you can do during follicular phase to support your body with nutrition and movement? Fresh, vibrant, light foods, phytoestrogens that mimic the body's natural estrogen and can balance when estrogen is still low. Also, a time to be consuming fermented food. Achar is your best friend during the follicular phase. It is priming your microbiome for ovulation. Super important. For movement, dynamic and challenging workouts. Strength training. You can leverage your body's improved muscle synthesis capabilities and engage in new physical activities or sport, whatever you like. This is the time to be doing so. All right, let's talk about